Hello everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to the 2024 Summer of Lovecraft. Before our attention turns to the Summer of Lovecraft, I do want to apologize for my behavior during last night's Inside Pitch stream. I definitely let my frustration get the better of me. Anyway, it's getting to be that time once again for the Summer of Lovecraft. This is our Arkham Horror Files campaign involving three of the biggest games in the Arkham Horror Files: Eldritch Horror, Arkham Horror 2nd Edition, and Elder Sign. Before that, though, we need an opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft, and that's where tonight's game comes in. We're playing Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu from Z-Man Games. Now, the way we're going to use this game as the play-in game for the Summer of Lovecraft is the last Ancient One to wake up during the course of the game when it ends. Whether it's through not being able to place a cultist or a Shoggoth when we need to, the investigator is going insane, not being able to draw a player card when we need to, Cthulhu waking up, and all those ways would cause us to lose the game, or we win by sealing gates in all four of the major cities in the mythos. That Ancient One will be our opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft. So far in the Summer of Lovecraft, we faced Nyarlathotep and we lost 3-0. He was 2022's opponent, and in 2023 we faced Yig, winning that one 2-1. With that ramble, let's finish setup at the board, and we'll start by meeting tonight's investigators. As usual, our investigators were randomly picked when I did setup last night. Our first investigator is the detective. His special ability is... Let me actually bring his card up. Well, there's his mini. We'll bring him up to the train station. His special ability is that he needs only 4 cards of the same color to seal a gate. So that is an option that we've got available to us as well. Now, as for the player cards he's got, first card up he's got Kingsport. Next up, Dunwich. Next up, another Dunwich and a third Dunwich. Ooh, we could fly down to Dunwich and seal the gate depending on the hand of our other investigator, but let's move over to him and let's move over to our other investigator and see who the detective is teaming up with tonight. Teaming up with the detective this year, we've got the doctor. There's the doctor's mini. We'll move him over to the train station as well. His special ability, you may do up to 5 actions per turn. So he's just the generic generalist, I guess. Starting cards in his hand, first up, Innsmouth. Next, Dunwich. Ooh. We could potentially get the seal if we could have gotten the seal right away if the order was flipped, but we're going with the detective first. Next up, another Dunwich, and wow, Dunwich for days. Actually, we might be able to get a first turn seal. Yeah, I think we can. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself there. With that note, we need to move back up top so we can do our initial setup. This also gives me an excuse to check out my up top shot. Let me just adjust that a little bit. I think if I zoom it about like so, that's perfect. That's about where I want to be. So I'm going to make a note of that. $22mm when we're up top. Okay. Now that we're all set, we need to spawn our initial enemies. First 2 cards of the off the summoning deck get 3 cultists apiece. First up, once it decides to focus, the factory gets 3 cultists all the way over here in Innsmouth. Actually, let me grab my laser pointer. Factory gets 3 cultists. Next card that gets 3, or next location that gets 3 is the Junkyard, which is over here not too far from Arkham, gets 3 cultists. Then these next 2 get 2. The Theater, which is down here in Kingsport, basically inaccessible to us right now. Next up, The Historic Inn gets 2 cultists, which is down here in Dunwich, our bus location in Dunwich. These next 2 locations get 1 cultist each. The Great Hall gets a cultist, as does the Swamp, which is down here in Dunwich. And then this last location gets a Shoggoth. So we spawn our first Shoggoth at the graveyard, which, oh joy, that's the Kingsport gate right away. So we may need to go try to kill that right away. We'll probably use the Doctor to do that, but I think we are all set for setup. Let me just double check. The Ancient One, Cthulhu, is of course the last one. Board and the pieces are set up. The Ancient Ones are all set. They call them the Old Ones, but Old Ones, Ancient Ones, Great Old Ones, whatever term you want to use is fine. Place the cultist in the Shoggoth, we just did that. Give each player an investigator figure insanity. I did all of that last night. Set the game's difficulty. We've got all the clue cards in there. Player cards and prepare the relic pile. That's all done. Prepare the player deck with the evil stirs. And the detective starts the game. So, let's move down to Arkham now and see what the detective is getting up to. Before we start the game, I will mention that my house rule around the trade action is in effect. So, whereas rules as written, you'd only be able to take a clue card that matches the current town, which right now we're in source supply of Arkham, but my house rule is that you can trade anything as long as you're in the same space. And the detective's first 2 actions will be doing that. He'll be taking 2 Dunwich cards for 2 actions. And you're wondering why I took two Dunwich clue cards when I only need 4 with the detectives to seal a gate. Because action 3 is going to be discarding a Dunwich clue card to move down to any location in Dunwich, which he's going to go to the Old Mill, and then he's going to spend the 4 Dunwich clue cards to get the seal in Dunwich right off the bat, which also means we get to take 2 cultists off the board right away. Right, trade, bus, seal. Okay. 2 cards from the player deck we find. The pawn shop gets a cultist, and the Shoggoth moves, which takes the... So the cultist goes up here to the pawn shop, the Shoggoth comes off the board, and we got our first Ancient One waking up already. Now, as far as being the Ancient One being the play-in game for the Summer of Lovecraft, if the game were to end... Actually, we've got to draw 2 cards first, so hold on a second. So the Shoggoth hasn't actually come off the board yet, but we are going to leave the card there. So 2 cards from the player deck. First card up. Is an alien carving. The active player can take 3 extra actions this turn, but relics require a roll of the sanity die. And Innsmouth. Okay, so now we have the pawn shop getting a cultist, and the Shoggoth comes off the board. We get our first awakening. Our first Ancient One joins the game. Now, if the game ends and this is the only Ancient One awakened, this would be our opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft. Our first Ancient One is Hastur. Draw the bottom card of the summoning deck, place a Shoggoth there. Discard that card to the summoning discard pile, then move each Shoggoth 1 location to the nearest open gate. I'm not sorry to see Hastur come out this early, because we got rather trounced by him during Christmas in Arkham last year. Anyway, our bottom card from the deck. Come on. Is the University. So the Shoggoth comes out at the University, and then it moves 1 to the nearest gate. And then the next card. Come on. There we go. The Wharf gets a cultist. All the way down in Kingsport, which is just off shot, over to this side, where my pointer finger is right now. Even though the focus is pretty bad. So now we move over to the Doctor, and going to defeat that Shoggoth before before we get another movement card that would take it off the board is probably not a terrible idea right now. And he's got 5 actions. So he's going to move 1 to the university, 2 to the park, which entering the space of the Shoggoth requires a roll of the sanity die. So I've got the tower and shot for that. Losing 2 sanity, that's great. I'm not going to go away with that just yet. And then 3, 4, 5, he will take the cultist off the board, which will also give him a relic. So he will find the silver key. The active player can instantly move to any location on the board. But we do want to be careful with the doctor now that we've had to cut his sanity in half from dealing with the Shoggoth. Anyway, that was all 5 of his actions, so 2 player cards. First up we find an Evil Stirs, which will move back up top to resolve, and Kingsport. So now let's move back up top to resolve the Evil Stirs. First order of business is to roll the sanity die for Evil Stirs. Nothing happens there, thankfully. And now we have an awakening, so Hastur now will not be our opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft this year. This Ancient One would be on deck for that next. So our next Ancient One is Yig. Sealing gates requires an additional clue card from a connected town. So good thing we sealed... It's a good thing we sealed Dunwich when we did. Oop. I don't want that to go just yet. Now we draw a Shoggoth, a bottom card of the summoning deck, and place a Shoggoth in the location. So now we find the church gets a Shoggoth, which is right here in Dunwich. And we've got a whole bunch of Shoggoth moves cards. That's going to be fun. We've got putting 2, 3, 4, 5... 5 Shoggoth moves cards right back on top. So it's very conceivable that we could end up in a situation where the Shoggoth... Actually, no, I was going to say the Shoggoth could get off the board this turn, but he couldn't. Because he'd have to go toward... He'd have to go toward Arkham, I think. Alright. So we're just regrouping cultists, shuffling the discard pile. And that's going to go down back on top of the deck. Evil Stirs will go away because I store those separately when I'm putting the game back away. Anyway, we're still summoning 2. We're still summoning 2. Still drawing 2 cultist cards. So first up we find the University gets a cultist and the Shoggoth moves. So the Shoggoth would actually be moving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7... Yep, he would be moving toward Arkham. And the next card is the Historic Inn gets a cultist, and the Shoggoth moves again. Historic Inn is right here in Dunwich. So now he's moving toward the park in Arkham. Okay, well, now we need to move back down to the detective and see what we can do with some of these cultists. We're going to send the detective up to Innsmouth babysitting cultists. So for action 1, he's going to... Oh, he has to be at a bus station to do that. So I think he's going to move action 1 to the church, action 2 to the Historic Inn, action 3 he'll discard his Innsmouth clue card to move to the junkyard, and action 4 he's going to take out one of those cultists. 2 clue cards from the deck the detective will find Arkham, or first Arkham, and another Arkham. So we're starting to stockpile Arkham a little bit. And then we need 2 cards from the summoning deck. First up we will find the Graveyard gets a cultist, which is down by the Kingsport Gate, and the Theater gets a cultist. Also down in Kingsport. Right. Did we put them? We might have put them in the wrong place, but oh well, we're not going to worry about that now. Moving over to the Doctor, do I want to risk his sanity again trying to defeat that Shuggoth? We flipped over 2 of the 5 Shuggoth moves cards that we put back on top. We can probably get back to Arkham if we need to, since the detective does have 2 clue cards right now. But the question is, do I want to work on babysitting cultists? I think I do want to work on cultists right now, so the Doctor's actually going to use a gate. We're going to risk his sanity again to move over to the hospital in Innsmouth, but that will take a roll of the sanity die. Nothing happening, thankfully. And then action 2, we'll move the camera just slightly so we catch the Doctor. He'll move over to the factory. Action 3, 4, 5, wipe out all 3 cultists there. And then 2 cards from the clue deck for the Doctor. First up, he will find another Kingsport. Okay. And an Innsmouth. So we're making some headway. He's at the factory. Next card from the summoning deck. So we need 2 here. We find the Swamp gets a cultist and the Shuggoth moves. So the Shuggoth is over at the university. And the Wharf gets a cultist. Okay, moving over to the detective. He's going to go 1-2 to take out these cultists just so we don't have a problem. Then he's going to move 3 to the diner and 4 over to the secret lodge. He's probably going to have to play patty cake with the Shuggoth in Arkham. 2 clue cards from the deck. First up we find an Innsmouth and the last hourglass. The active player may take any clue card from the player discard pile. That could be something potentially useful there. But we also need 2 cards from the summoning deck. First up we find the factory gets a cultist. Good thing we babysat cultists up in Innsmouth this turn. And the Great Hall gets a cultist, and the Shuggoth moves. So the Shuggoth is on the park. We're going to have to duck 1 more turn, probably. Actually, are we going to have to duck 1 more turn? Because we're over to the Doctor's turn now. He could get back to Arkham now and take that Shuggoth out. We could use an Innsmouth to do it. Yeah, I think we're going to do that. So action 1, he's going to take a bus since the factory is a bus station. I'm going to discard an Innsmouth to move anywhere. I'm going to move him back to the park. Since he's moving into the Shuggoth space, he needs a roll of the sanity die. Which is another sanity, so he's down to 1 sanity now. That was action 1, 2, 3, 4. He'll defeat the Shuggoth. And then for a relic he will find Migo Eye. The next gate requires 1 fewer clue card to seal. Put this card next to the player discard pile and discard it when the next gate is sealed. Okay, that's probably a good thing to have. And then action 5, he'll move over to the secret lodge, where we'll probably start getting ready to seal our next gate. And then 2 clue cards from the deck. First up for the Doctor, we will find a Dunwich. And now we are at 7 cards, so we are going to have to discard. And Another Dunwich, which we can... I was going to say we can junk the Dunwich, but honestly I think we probably can, because we've already got so many Dunwich cards. And then 2 cards from the summoning deck. First up we find Pawn Shop, and a good thing we got rid of the Shoggoth one we did, because it would have gone off the board, and another ancient one would have awakened. And the Church gets a Cultist. So that's down here. We're back over to the detective's turn next. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so... yeah, he's got 6 cards right now. What do we have in the discard pile right now? Anything that we'd be... it's all Dunwich and Innsmouth. Which... well, we're not really at a place right now where I think we need to go digging through the deck yet. But I think for action 1, the detective will take an Innsmouth from the doctor. Action 2, we'll go work on babysitting Kingsport a little bit, so he'll move over to the diner. Action 3, he'll discard a Kingsport to move down to the Great Hall, and Action 4, he'll defeat a cultist there. 2 clue cards from the deck for the detective. First up we find Arkham and a Dunwich, which is discard fodder. Then we need 2 cards from the summoning deck. First up we'll find the Junkyard gets a cultist, as does the Market. And now we need to start having an eye on getting some cultists out of the way here so we can try to babysit so we don't run out of cultists in the supply. Doctor's turn next. Action 1, he's going to move over to the diner. Action 2, he'll toss a Kingsport to move down to the Market. 3, 4, 5, he'll wipe out these 3 cultists. Remember, he's got 5 actions in a turn. 2 clue cards up from the deck. First up for the doctor, we'll find an Innsmouth and another Innsmouth. Okay, we've got some options here, but we need to figure out how to move some of these cards around. 2 cards from the summoning deck. First up we'll find the police station gets a cultist right here, as does the cafe, which is down here in Dunwich. Okay, back over to the detective we go. Now I want to start working on getting these cards concentrated. So over to the detective. He's going to... actually, we're going to bring the dice tower in shop because we're going to be using at least 1 relic this turn. Is it going to position right there? Yes, it will. Okay. I don't think we had an Arkham in the discard pile, did we? No, but we do have a few Innsmouth. So I will use the last Hourglass to take an Innsmouth out of the discard pile. Then we'll roll a sanity die for the detective. Detective loses his sanity. That's not too catastrophic right now. Actually, technically, we would have enough to seal either Innsmouth or Arkham right now if I want to risk. If I want to use the Migo Eye. But that would be a risk on the doctor's sanity right now. Let's... Actually, the silver key could actually just move a player right now. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So the doctor will use the silver key to move the active player, which is the detective. We'll move the detective up to... What do we have more discarded of right now? We'll send the detective to... wait a second. Hang on. I want to do this in a little bit of a different order. So I am probably still going to end up doing that, but I don't want to do it just yet. Action 1, I'm going to move to the market. Action 2, I'm going to trade an Innsmouth over to the detective, who will then use the alien carving, so we can take 3 extra actions. And that's from the doctor. So we put 2 cultists down because of the roll of the sanity die. The doctor can probably deal with those cultists. So the detective has 3 more actions. That was action 2, was to trade. Then action 3 is going to be to take an Innsmouth. So I have a... Actually, do I need an Innsmouth? I'd be using it to travel. Yeah, that's probably fine. So action 3, he'll take an Innsmouth. 4, he'll discard the Innsmouth. The detective will discard the Innsmouth. Actually, shoot. He'll have to discard an Arkham first. Now, for action... Actually, this is action... Action 1 was to move. 2 to trade. 2 and 3 were both to trade. 4, he's going to take the bus up to Innsmouth, going up to the hospital. 5, he'll discard his 4 Innsmouth and an Arkham clue card to close the Innsmouth, to seal the Innsmouth gate. Taking a cultist off of each of those. That was action 5. We used it at action 2. So you can do 3 more actions. You can take 3 extra actions. So that was a total of 7. So we've got 2 actions left. We'll get that out of the way. Then he'll go action 6, action 7. We'll try to keep the cultist supply in check. 2 clue cards from the deck now that the detective's hand is mostly refilled, or is mostly empty. First up, we've got an Evil Stirs, which will move back up top to resolve, and a Warded Box. No sanity roll required to play this card. Until the end of your next turn, players need not do sanity rolls. Place this card in front of you as a reminder. So let's move back up top to deal with this Evil Stirs. First order of business, we're fighting the madness with a roll of the sanity die. Detective loses 1 sanity. And then we reveal the next Ancient One. So now Yig is not our opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft. This Ancient One's on deck for that. Shub-Niggurath. Draw 4 cards from the bottom of the summoning deck and add 1 cultist to each of these locations. Discard these cards to the summoning discard pile. We, of course, faced Shub-Niggurath during Christmas in Arkham in 2022 and beat her 3-0. So 4 cards from the bottom of the discard pile. So first up we find the Woods gets a cultist. Is it just a shug-off? I'm assuming that when you, as part of Evil Stirs, yep, it's just a shug-off. Next card up, the Old Mill, which is the gate location. Next up, the Boardwalk, and the Farmstead. Okay, that's right down here. Then we draw the bottom card of the deck for the Shuggoth. So here we're spawning at the hospital, which is the Innsmouth gate, but thankfully the detective was able to close that. So now the Shoggoth is heading for Arkham. And we're putting most of the deck back on top, or most of the deck back on top. But thankfully, only summoning 2 cultists still. But we could end up having sanity problems if the Shoggoth starts moving. Okay. First card up. The Factory gets a cultist. Thankfully, the Shoggoth does not move. Next card up. The Pawn Shop gets a cultist, and the Shoggoth does move. So now we've got to fight the madness for the detective once again. Bringing the dice tower right back in shot. The cup is right here. And nothing happening, thankfully. That's something of a relief there. So that Evil Stirs is done. Now we can move down to the Doctor and see what he's doing. We're not about to have any awakening rituals, but the supply of cultists is starting to get spread a little bit thin for comfort. So I think we're going to focus the Doctor's turn on trying to thin them out a little bit. Actions 1 and 2, bye-bye 2 cultists. Action 3 over to the wharf. Actions 4 and 5, bye-bye 2 more cultists. 2 clue cards from the deck. First up we find an Innsmouth and an Arkham. Unfortunately, the hand is very much spread thin right now. 2 cards from the summoning deck. First up we find the Market gets a cultist, which is right here. And if the Shoggoth doesn't move, we're probably going to go ahead and wipe it out. And the Great Hall, and of course the Shoggoth moves. I'm not going to go chasing him down because we've got a little while. Well, we've got 3 more moves before the Shoggoth gets to the park. Actually, 4 before he becomes a problem. So over to the detective. Action 1, defeat a cultist. Action 2 to the Factory. Action 3, defeat another cultist. Action 4, I don't want to discard this Arkham to move. So I will go... Actually, I might have to, as much as I don't like the idea. I am going to discard the Arkham to move to... We're going to move to the park. It's the gate, and we can babysit Arkham a little bit from there. 2 clue cards from the deck for the detective. First up we find an Arkham to replace the one we just used, and a Kingsport. Remember, because of Yig, we do also need a Dunwich or an Innsmouth to seal Arkham. 2 cards from the summoning deck. First up we'll find the police station gets a cultist, as does the Historic Inn, and the Shoggoth moves. The Historic Inn is up here, and the Shoggoth moves to the diner. Over to the Doctor. Action 1 to the Market. Action 2, bye-bye 1 cultist. Actually, let me adjust the camera just a touch. There we are. That was action 1, bye-bye a cultist. Action 2 to the Great Hall. 3 and 4, bye-bye 2 more cultists. Action 5, we're going to head to the swamp. We're going to try to do a little bit of babysitting in Dunwich. 2 clue cards from the deck for the Doctor. First up we'll find a Dunwich, which is basically discard fodder at this point, and an Arkham, which is very much not discard fodder. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We'll discard a Dunwich. And then 2 cards from the summoning deck. First up we'll find the Wharf gets a cultist. The Wharf, Kingsport. As does The theater. Theater being down here. Over to the detective. He's going to do a little bit of a loop here in Arkham. Action 1 to the police station. 2 and 3, bye-bye 2 cultists. Action 4, down to the park. He's going to plan on ambushing that Shuggoth if he can. 2 cards from the clue deck. First up, a Dunwich, which is good because of Yig, and an Arkham, so we need to start accumulating those pretty quickly. 2 cards from the summoning deck. First up, we'll find the hospital gets a cultist. Innsmouth Gate, no wonder I couldn't find it. And the junkyard gets a cultist. Up here in Innsmouth. Over to the doctor. Action 1 to the farmstead. Action 2 up to the historic inn. Actions 3, 4, and 5. Bye-bye all 3 cultists. Even though I think we did have the historic inn come up as a location. Yep. I'd rather not take a chance with getting an evil stirs and having to shuffle everything back in and have that end up at the top. So that was all 5 of the doctor's actions, which means we've got 2 cards coming up. First card up is an evil stirs, which will move back up top to resolve in a minute, and an Arkham, which should 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We'll discard the Innsmouth, and then we'll move back up top to resolve the evil stirs. Well, we'll no longer be having a rematch from Christmas in Arkham 2022. Let's see what our fighting the madness is. That loses 2 madness, and the doctor goes insane. So let's take a look at the doctor's insane side. 4 actions, so he's back to his regular action total. We'll get that out of the way, then we'll wake our next Ancient One up. Next Ancient One coming out is Azathoth. Remove 3 cultists from the unused supply. So we'll put them there, and now Azathoth is potentially on deck as our next opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft this year. Next, Shuggoth is going to spawn at the diner. Oh, delightful! So we've got 2 Shuggoths moving toward the gate, and I believe they both move if we move each Shuggoth. Okay. Yowza, and we're flipping over 3 cards now? How many Shuggoth moves are we putting back on top? 1, 2, 3. So it's not inconceivable that we get both Shuggoths coming out. We need to be very careful to the point where we might almost need to try to get the doctor to seal this next gate. But let's see what happens here. Even 2 puts us in deep. Even 2 Shuggoth moves is going to put us in deep trouble because that's going to put both Shuggoths on the park with the detective, and the odds he's going to survive 2 sanity rolls with his sanity intact. I wouldn't hang good odds on that. First card up. The theater gets a cultist. Next up, the wharf gets a cultist. And the Great Hall gets a cultist, and the Shuggoths move. So we're not just in trouble yet, but we're probably not too much longer for this world right now. But again, we're not concerned with the win necessarily in this game. We're more concerned about getting the opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft. So, or we could probably defeat one of those Unless we use the warded box here, which let's move down to the detective while I think about that. Okay, I think we need to go for it here. So the detective first up is going to use his warded box. With no sanity roll required to play this card, until the end of your turn, players do not need to do sanity rolls. So that's until the detective's next turn. Then the doctor is going to use the silver key. The active player can move to any location on the board. He's going to move to the historic inn. And we're going to use the Migo Eye, so the next gate requires one fewer clue card to seal. Alright, so we'll place that there. Okay, then action 1. Actually, actions 1 and 2. He's going to take... No. He's going to take an Arkham for action 1. Action 2, he's going to take a Dunwich. Action 3, he'll discard one of his Dunwich to move back to the park. So that was actions 1 and 2. Action 3 was taking a bus at Dunwich. Well, actually, maybe he might not care about that. Then action 4, he'll discard his 3 Arkham and his Dunwich to seal the park, which will help clear some of those which actually will only get one cultist off the board. But still, that's something anyway. So that only gets the cultist from the university. That's all 4 cards, or all 4 actions. 2 clue cards up. First up we find a Kingsport and Song of Cthulhu. No sanity roll required to play this card. Choose one. All players regain 1 sanity token, or 1 player regains full. Can we use that to get sanity back? Any card allows players to regain sanity, and Insane Investigator becomes sane as described above. Okay, so... Actually, he's going to go ahead and use the Song of Cthulhu, since we don't need a sanity roll for that anyway. And the doctor is going to become fully sane. There's also a benefit here of, by sealing Arkham, now the Shoggoths are going to have to take the long way around. So in theory, we should have enough time to get enough appropriate clue cards together to be able to seal Kingsport. Anyway, 3 summoning cards. First up we find the Factory gets a cultist. Up here. Next up, the Historic Inn gets a cultist, and the Shoggoth moves, and it's a very good thing. The Shoggoths move, and it's a very good thing we sealed Arkham now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm trying to find the shortest path. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so they're going to move back through Arkham. And then the last card, the Diner gets a cultist, which is right on top of the Shoggoths. Back over to the Doctor, who's now back up to 5 actions. He's going to move... I want to get him into Kingsport. I could just have him walk there. We just drew the theater, so I think we're fine. We drew the theater as one of our top cards, so I think we can just have him walk to Kingsport. Action 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll have to do a little bit of cultist babysitting on the way. 2 clue cards for the Doctor. First up we find a Kingsport, which we badly need Kingsport. We've got 2 more on the Detective. We just need to get a connecting clue card. So we need either an Innsmouth or a Dunwich. That's a Kingsport. Not entirely unwelcome. 2 cards from the deck. First up, or 3 cards from the summoning deck. First up, the Police Station gets a cultist. Next up, the Hospital and The pawn shop and the Shoggoths move. Pawn shop and the Shoggoths move to the junkyard. Over to the detective, he's going to move action 1 to the university, 2 to the train station, 3 to discard a Kingsport and move to the theater. Action 4, take out a cultist there. 2 cards from the summoning deck. First up, we'll find an Innsmouth. There's our connecting clue card. And another Innsmouth. So we've got enough connecting clue cards now that we can seal Kingsport and win this game. 3 summoning cards from the deck. First up, we find the market gets a cultist. We're definitely racing the clock on cultists, though. Next up, the junkyard. Right, that's up here in Innsmouth. Oh, right, where the Shoggoths are. No wonder I can't see it. And the swamp gets a cultist and the Shoggoths move. So we definitely need to get some of these cultists off the board. We're into the doctor's turn next. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to be racing the clock to keep the cultists under control and still be able to get enough seals that we need. We need to get the cards over to we need to get the cards concentrated that we need while one of them can still go seal the gate. First card up for the doctor is an Arkham and a Kingsport. So he's got the clues that we need. We just need to get a connected clue card over to him before we lose control of this game. We're probably going to be working our way over there little by little. First card up for the summoning, the graveyard, which is actually the Kingsport gate, so that's convenient. That's where we're headed. Next up, the church and the woods gets a cultist and the Shoggoths move. Up to the factory and over to the detective's turn. He's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. It's almost like we're playing a game of leapfrog at this point. We're also racing the player card deck, though. First card up is a Kingsport and an Innsmouth. 3 cards from the summoning deck. First up, the old mill. Right here. Next up, the cafe and the university and the Shoggoths move. University and the Shoggoths move. I'll move the discard pile so you guys can see what's going on with the Shoggoths a little better. Now we're over to the doctor's turn, and the question here is, are we going to be able... Actually, we have 2 questions. One, are we going to be able to get the cards we need and be able to ignore the cultists? And is Azathoth going to be our opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft? I think both of those questions are going to answer in the negative. So... We need to kill both of those cultists at the graveyard. The only problem is I don't think we're going to make it. I think we're going to run out of player cards first. I think we're going to run out of cultists first. Because the thing is, if we're in a situation right now where if the next card is not an evil, if one of the next two clue cards is not an evil stirs, there is one left in the deck. If we ignore those cultists, Azathoth will be our opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft. How many cards do we have left in the player in the clue deck? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 3 more turns left in the player card deck. This is gonna be close. But I think we have to kill those cultists. And actually, I think we're even just prolonging the inevitable on that, because the cultists are too spread over the board. Because we're going to need at least 2 actions to take the... Unless we use a Kingsport to go babysit. Unless we use a Kingsport at the bus station to go babysitting. I think that's a dumb idea. Well, we do have a spare Kingsport, actually, unless I use the detective to seal the gate. Well, I think we're gonna have to do something here. So it's the doctor's turn. Let's go. Let's go action 1 to the market. 2. No. I'd probably be better served using an Arkham to go up to the police station and kill cultists there. So I'll go up to the police station for action 2, 3, 4, 5. This has very much been a gamble any way that we've done it. So first card up is an Innsmouth, which is another connecting city to Kingsport, and another Kingsport. So that's actually enough. Actually, if we duck the evil stirs one more time, we can seal. Actually, we might still be able to make this work. We're going to be down to the wire, though. We're discarding an Arkham. 3 clue cards from the deck, or 3 summon cards. First up, the Boardwalk gets a cultist, which is on top of the Shoggoths again. Next up, the Farmstead. Discard pile is over here. The Farmstead and the Secret Lodge and the Shoggoths move. So we'll move the Shoggoths first. We are out of cultists, but we don't lose the game until we need to place one. Right? Yes, I believe. Yep, not enough cultists are left when needed. So we don't need cultists yet, but we will on the detective's next turn unless I can somehow kill at least 3 cultists here. Which action 1... I don't think I can, though. So action 1, he'll move over to the... Yeah, I think the most I can do is 2. So I think we'll go... Yeah, I think we'll just go action 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we'll see if we duck the... We'll see if we duck the last evil stirs. Basically, the situation we're in now is if we duck the last evil stirs, Azathoth is our opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft. If we don't duck if we draw the evil stirs here, then whatever ancient one this one is our opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft. First card up, Arkham, and Arkham. So that means we're going to be drawing 2 cards from the summoning deck but because we're going to run out of cultists when we need to place the third one, we'll play it through, but it's going to boil down to Azathoth as our opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft this year. First card up, the Park gets a cultist, which is the Arkham Gate. Next up, the Train Station gets a cultist. And then look at that, we're out of... Actually, let me zoom back up top since this is going to be where we're going in a second. We are out of cultists thanks to the 3 Azathoth took away. So with that, we've lost the game, but again, I wasn't interested in the win here. I was interested in getting an opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft, and we have that. We have our opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft in Azathoth. And that will do it for this playthrough of Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu. Still quite busy on the channel. Tomorrow we're going to have the last of our baseball test streams as we play Payoff Pitch Baseball. Wednesday we're going to have Pino with Phoenix for July. So tomorrow's Payoff Pitch video will be the last video for any AMA questions you might have for during Pino with Phoenix on Wednesday. Saturday we'll be starting Mystical Munchies out of our new cookbook with the appetizer. More on that during Pino with Phoenix. Sunday we'll have the first leg in the Summer of Lovecraft as we play Eldritch Horror. As for next week, we're back to Wednesday videos as our first Call of Cthulhu adventure finds us alone against the flames. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care, everyone.